Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed seeing the ruins of the Agora and Acropolis from Athens. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about the city states. Now, city states, they were very similar, but they were different. And as we said, they had their own government, laws, they even had their own calendar, money, system of weights, measures, and ideas about who was considered a citizen. Now, you might think that, oh, if you lived there, you were a citizen. Not always. So, who was considered a citizen? Well, actually, it was very, very few people were considered citizens. Only a small portion, okay, were actually citizens. That small portion, it varied from city to state, but for the most part, it was kind of the same. First of all, you had to be free, you had to be a man, and you had to be born in the city state and owned land. So those are usually the four requirements, okay? You had to be free, which meant that you were not a slave. You had to be a male. Sorry, ladies. You had to be born in the city state and you must own land. So no renters. Okay. So women were not citizens. Men who did not own land were not citizens, and slaves were not citizens. Okay? Only citizens had political and legal rights. So that meant if someone stole from you and you were not a citizen, you had no rights. Sorry, out of luck. Okay? Only citizens could vote. Only citizens could hold office. So, okay? They could only own property, and only citizens could speak for themselves in court. Nobody else could. Okay? And citizens were expected to serve in the government. So, wait a second. There were slaves? Yes. Just like in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, okay, there were slaves. So, actually, about one fourth to one third of the population of each city state were slaves. Now, slaves were people who had been conquered. Okay, so for instance, if Athens went in and conquered a neighboring area, they might take those places. Think about the Trojan War. At the end of the Trojan War, all of the women of Troy were taken as slaves. Okay, so that's where they got their slaves from. Now, it was also people who owed a debt. So if you borrowed money to maybe build a building or something and you couldn't pay it back, then you could become a slave. So it's a very interesting mix. Okay. So there are different types of government that we need to speak about. And each government, it varied from different city states. They all had different forms of government. Okay. So the first word you need to know is aristocracy. So an aristocracy is a rule by the nobility. In other words, the rich ruled. Okay, a tyrant. Now, nowadays we think of the word tyrant is bad, but not necessarily always. So, a tyrant is a person who illegally gained power but had the people's support and brought better life to the people. That's in ancient Greece, not necessarily today. Today, it's very bad to be called a tyrant. It means you're mean, you're horrible, you're a tyrant. I know my own kids call me a tyrant all the time. Okay. But in ancient Greece, it wasn't bad. Necessarily a bad ruler. Okay. It just meant somebody who illegally gained power. Okay. So keep that in mind. Even though it's considered bad today, wasn't considered bad back then. Okay. So democracy. We live in a democracy. A democracy is a government where power lay in the hands of the citizens. But remember, not everybody is a citizen. Okay. And then there's actually, I love this word. I love saying this word. Just say it with me. Oligarchy. Oligarchy. I don't know. It just has, I like saying oligarchy. Okay. But doesn't necessarily not the best form of government. In an oligarchy, only a few wealthy people held power. Okay. So you had maybe like about 5 to 7 people, but they were wealthy. So they're going to represent and take care of wealthy people, not necessarily the poor people.